There are 10 huge mistakes in Wuchang Fallen Feathers that are costing you tons of progression, tons of levels and skills, some amazing items, and overall just slowing you down. Now, one important thing to know is you can respec extremely often in Wuchang Fallen Feathers, and this is great for circumstantial fights, whether you're fighting a specific boss type and want to respec either to different weapons or to different skills in general. It's super easy. It's completely free. All you have to do is go in your skill tree, hit square, and you can respec as many nodes as you want. Now, one key thing is if you want to respec all the way back here, you can actually just hit square, reset all 8 of those nodes, get back every material you spent, and then respec accordingly however you would like. It is highly suggested, especially early on in the game, to respec your character into different weapon types to figure out which one either is more powerful or which one you just typically like more. Different weapons have different discipline skills, like the longsword and the sword counter ability. We're actually able to deflect incoming enemy hits and then parry that with different variants so that way you can follow up with strikes and actually knock the enemy back and essentially stun them for free. The same goes with other great weapon passives like Sword Savant for the longsword, so that way on the third attack of a longsword light attack you actually gain the clash ability, meaning on your third strike, if it happens to hit while an enemy swinging at you, you will actually deflect most of that incoming damage. I respec multiple times to figure out I wanted to use the longsword over things like the axe, for instance. And again, this allows to experiment early with the weapons you want, which you should totally do because every weapon has different mechanics. You might even choose to respec for things like some of the bonus passives that you get, or buffs to, for instance, your vitality or endurance or strength. You can see if we spec into vitality here for +5 vitality, we get 147 additional HP, and that can definitely be the difference between surviving a boss fight and dying. The same goes for endurance. We get an additional 10 stamina, which can equate to an extra attack entirely, and even agility that's going to boost our overall weapon damage as well as give us a bunch of extra damage reduction buffs. But first, thanks to G2A, who is today's sponsor. G2A is my one-stop place, getting the best deals on games, software, and gift cards, and it's one of the most secure marketplaces out there. The reason I use G2A is because the transaction process is super simple, very easy, very secure, with great customer support and the best buyer protections so you don't have to worry. G2A offers one of the most comprehensive global payment platforms and supports over 400 banking channels with super easy payment methods like PayPal, Venmo, and even localized options for different countries like Blick in Poland for ease of use no matter what region you're in. G2A is amazing because they put security first. They're supported by AI-trained security platforms and even trusted best tech from companies like SentinelOne and Qualys, protecting you so you don't have to worry. Make sure to click the link in the description and go over to G2A and see what deals you can find because they're always running some amazing deals. Visit g2a.com below and open your gate to adventure. Thanks G2A for sponsoring today's video. Let's get back to it. Whether you respec into a different weapon or respec your overall passive buffs, it's important to keep in mind your scaling. For instance, if you're using one of these axes, you can see this weapon scales specifically on the right hand side off of strength. Putting points in agility or strength increase your overall weapon damage, but your weapon damage only actually increases based on the stats that it scales with. So something like the Vermilion War Club would primarily get tons of extra damage speccing entirely into strength. So in that case, if we were using the War Club, taking this strength path would give us infinitely more damage than taking this agility path since our weapon scales with strength. You can see if we equip the Vermilion War Club, currently our slashing damage is 65 plus 20, 90 plus 27, and 57 plus 17. Now with the decision to take all of our strength nodes, you can see now our damage numbers on the left are going to have additional bonuses to the actual damage that our weapon is doing. Even some weapons like the Moonlight Dragon weapon scale evenly across strength, agility, and magic, where other weapons will scale higher in agility slightly more than they will strength. Next is Skyborne Might, and specifically prioritizing it. Once you get the basic skills down for your weapons, you need to make sure you spec to the left of the skill tree where you pass Skyborne Call 1 that gives you 2 max stacks of Skyborne Might. Eventually you get to Skyborne Call level 2, get an extra stack of Skyborne Might, and then an additional stack once you get to Skyborne Call 3. That will give you 4 stacks overall of Skyborne Might and will allow you to cast way more spells, way more abilities, and overall do way more damage. And once you get your skills down, prioritizing this early on, it's going to allow you to get a ton of, again, free spells, free damage, and will allow you to hit way harder. And once you unlock Skyborne Call 3, even taking something like Skyborne Resilience, so that a spell that actually requires 4 or more Skyborne Might will actually make casting these spells more difficult for enemies to interrupt. One thing to make sure you can always have spells available to cast and have enough Skyborne Might to cast them consistently is actually a lot easier than you think. Steel Resolve, as an example, when above 50% Madness, allows you to gain a stack of Skyborne Might upon deflecting an enemy's attack. This means every time we deflect an attack, we gain 1 Skyborne Might for free. Like the sword counter, meaning we can easily take those deflections that we're doing and be getting free Skyborne Might from them. Each skill also has some of these not direct abilities, but kind of passive abilities, again like the longsword using Swordmaster. So the 5th attack of a longsword light attack combo actually grants you 2 Skyborne Might if you hit an enemy, with also Sword Saint early on in the longsword tree giving you a stack of Skyborne Might if you hit an enemy with the 2nd attack of a longsword light attack combo. So if we can deflect an enemy's attack 1 time and then hit them with a 5-hit combo, we instantly have 4 Skyborne Might extremely quickly. We can then immediately cast a ton of spells for free damage and then replenish our Skyborne Might very easily again. Also, shimmering an enemy grants 1 stack of Skyborne Might for free. If you perform a perfect dodge on an enemy, you also get Skyborne Might from that as well. And you can see by stacking our Skyborne Might skills and our ability to maintain that quickly, we can then get tons of free damage and tons of free casts with our spells, use it for potency to power up our abilities to deal more damage, and makes us hit infinitely times harder. So focus on maxing out your Skyborne Might and the Skyborne Might that you can generate quickly. Now you should start using tempering ASAP, and this is one thing I didn't fully understand at the beginning and lost a ton of damage from. Now in your temperance menu, you start with 2 free slots to put these so-called needles, which will enhance your overall weapon, so we can then temper our weapon, make it do more damage, and make it more efficient. Now in the skill tree initially, you'll come across this first node on the left called Alteration. This is actually going to unlock an additional acupoint spot, meaning you can put another needle in your weapon. So when you temper your weapon, it has an entirely new additional effect that makes it more powerful. Now there are 3 of these you can unlock in the skill tree, and you should unlock them quickly because they're super overpowered. You first have Alteration here, you then have an additional one, and then you have a final alteration node right here at the bottom of the left side. And as you unlock all 4, it will allow you to unlock all of your temperance spots and allow you to add tons of free damage here. You can see we're first starting with tempering our fire attack power, meaning it'll boost our weapon and make it a fire weapon. We then have another needle at the back that will allow our status buildup gain from tempering to increase, meaning our burn status. We have 2 more needles here in the middle that actually increase both the control for strength and agility of our weapon. You can see on the right, since our weapon scales with both strength and agility, that means we're upping our overall damage in both of those categories. Also, one important thing you could spec into is Rapid Temperance, and while at 50% Madness, which you can very easily stay at most of the time, you'll get an accelerated effect, allowing your Temperance to actually be activated much quicker. Keep in mind, one of the big mistakes me and a bunch of friends already made is thinking this just naturally applied, and it doesn't. One of the things you actually have to do is go into your items menu, hover over your temperance slot, and actually equip it in order to activate it and apply that to your weapon. You can see if we apply this, we go from 3 stacks down to 2 stacks, but we now apply fire and a bunch of other extra damage buffs to our weapon itself. Taking nodes like temper, that gives us +1 temperance charge, and then this temper node over here as well allows us to gain those temperance stacks. So down in the bottom, our max temperance stacks go from 1 all the way up to 3, meaning we can cast temper 3 times. In order to actually replenish that, you'll have to worship at one of the checkpoint statues and then select Inner Dream in order to refresh this, just like you would your mana potions. Next is different enemies have different weakness types. Just like your character has strength depending on what armor you're wearing in melee type attacks versus magic attacks or lightning, fire, or corruption resistance, enemies work exactly the same way, and the same goes for resistances. You can see our poise break is 95 on the right, but our despair resistance is at 160, meaning we're going to protect against that despair status much better than we would something like poise breaks. Again, that works the same for enemies in Wuchang. Using fire on enemies like the big tree enemies will cause them to take a significant amount more damage, and also you can apply stacks of burn much more quickly to those type of enemies since they are weak to fire. The same goes for enemies with things like metal masks. It allows you to use lightning damage against them. The same also goes for damage types like blight, lightning, and corruption as well. And what's made fighting bosses and tons of enemies a lot easier in Wuchang is actually leveraging our temperance, which we just talked about, which you can respec at any point basically. and actually spec into specific types of damage. So if you're fighting some sort of boss and you're finding it very difficult, you can actually come over here and respec into, for instance, Bone Needle Poise Break, so you do more poise damage to that enemy, or Bone Needle Lightning, so that way you can apply the lightning and the paralysis buildup directly to your weapon. The same thing goes here for like Frostbite for fire type enemies. Being able to apply Corruption or even being able to apply Blight means that we can then come in and apply this newly given Bone Needle of Lightning, apply lightning to our weapon, and then be able to attack and deal infinitely more damage. Now use the right weapon that you like to use, but not only that, all weapons have much different abilities and totally different use cases. But certain weapons have abilities that others don't. For instance, the longsword has the sword counter that allows you to actually deflect the enemy's attack. You can combine this with the variants that actually will then knock the enemy back and then allow you to perform an immediate follow-up counterattack. Other weapons like the axe, for instance, start with the ability to block attacks, but then doesn't actually give you the similar type of deflection ability that, for instance, the longsword does. This gives us a huge advantage with the longsword because not only can we deflect attacks to deal tons of damage and mitigate our damage, but we can also still perform our perfect dodge via shimmer. And this gives us extra opportunities to earn easy Skyborne might as well as do additional damage. Again, a weapon like the spear early on is great and does tons of damage, but giving you access to something like aerial bulwark early can help you evade enemy attacks and actually launch a counter. But arguably, this is much harder to do than simply timing the block for sword counter, so it can be a bit more difficult. The dual blades primarily rely on performing perfect dodges or getting attacks off enough that you're able to simply just clash weapons with the enemy and just fight through whatever damage they're dealing because it's highly mitigated when you clash with them, like Leaf Slasher, where your 4th, 5th, and 6th attacks actually gain clash, and successful clashes grant you 1 stack of Skyborne Might, meaning you'll essentially deflect most of that damage, but in a different way than all the other weapons would. Where again, the sword also relies on very quick attacks, high damage, and dodging over more deflection and blocking. So depending on your playstyle, if you want quick hitting, dodging type of gameplay, definitely go for something like the sword or something like the dual blades and you'll be plenty happy. If you want a happy mix, go with the spear. And then if you want the ability to block, deflect, and essentially counter enemies, you can go with the much slower axe, or you can go with the longsword, which we perfectly think is the best balance of both worlds, since sword counter is an absolutely amazing ability. One mistake that can slow your leveling tremendously is either losing or not gaining the proper amount of red mercury essence. The first thing is a lot of the red mercury essence you're going to be getting is really kind of, in my opinion, a 50-50 split between killing enemies, but also finding a ton of red mercury items on the ground itself. These are going to be the blue pickup items, which is why you should pick up every single blue item you can possibly find, because they can stack up and give you tons of XP, especially at a time, can give you sometimes 5 to 10 levels. So do not underestimate these items, thinking that they're regularly based items that you're going to pick up on the ground and just skipping over the small blue pickups. Now, when you die, just like another Souls type game, you drop your red mercury on the ground. This means once you respawn, you have to find your way back to it and pick it up before dying. If you die before picking it up, that red mercury XP basically disappears and you never get it back. Early on, you're actually able to find a pendant called the Pixu pendant that reduces the amount of red mercury you drop when dying. Because trust me, there's tons of ways you can get knocked off cliffs or something, or just completely random deaths that can cause you to lose a ton of XP this way. I've probably lost all my XP 10 times because I went to go pick it up and someone just jumped out and knocked me off a cliff while I was on the way back to my body because I was trying to rush and wasn't paying attention. It can cost you a lot of levels and skill points. Also keep in mind, once your madness reaches 100%, which you can see in the bottom left-hand corner, if you die and go back to your body, you'll have to fight a demon remnant of yourself. Typically, this demon will be pretty powerful, and again, you have to kill him to get your red mercury back. If you don't, it's gone forever. So keep that in mind. If you have to use all your healing potions to finish him off just to get your XP back, highly recommended. Whatever you're doing, no matter how good your armor is, don't keep using the same armor, because different areas of the game actually expose you to different weaknesses, different resistances, and different attack types that you're going to have to strategically, in some parts of the game, choose armor for to help mitigate it. Early on, you'll build up corruption as a status effect very quickly. Making sure you have gear equipped, like for instance the embroidered headband, will overall increase your resistances and your corruption resistance, so you don't actually get that corruption status effect as fast, and it can make a huge difference in the amount of time that status buildup actually takes to be applied to you. The same for later on areas. You begin to acquire despair resistance, and if despair resistance builds up too high, it will actually just kill you right on the spot. And if you run through these areas without gear on like this, that actually give you a huge increase to your despair resistance. If you don't do that, you will die very quickly. So depending on the area you're on, especially if you're struggling, adjusting your gear to the resistance type that area has, whether it's burn, frostbite, corruption, despair, can make a huge difference in clearing the area. The same goes for mitigation in terms of your damage for armor. This means something like slash or stab damage for an enemy or boss that has a sword will hit you for way less damage. The Ming armor, if we don't have to worry about resistances, will give us much better chances at surviving those fights because of our huge increase to slash, blunt, and stab mitigation. Keep in mind, you can also get resistance items through your pendants that actually increase resistance to certain damage types as well as leveraging things like the Emerald Lotus Seed or even something early on like the Purple Camellia Flower that alleviates the status buildups and actually cures that individual thing. Using these often and early in the game, all throughout the game, is vital for making your experience going through the game much easier. Now make sure you're not just stacking these items to the moon because you get a lot of them and you can use them very often. So again, using something like these resistance alleviation items are super useful and you should use them whenever you need. So if you're going through an area where it's tons of corruption, put this item on your hotbar so that way you can use it quickly whenever needed, because trust me, these will kill you very quickly. Not to mention using things like boosting your stamina for boss fights, for instance, is a huge buff and it's a lot bigger than you realize. Having your temperance slotted so you're using that often, and even using additional healing items. So really make sure you're using them to actually help you beat the game instead of just collecting them. Make sure not to miss any area of the map because these golden chests and smaller chests give you the biggest upgrades in the game. This is why every corner of the game, if you haven't been there, there's a chance if you don't explore it, there may be a golden chest sitting right around the corner. And those golden chests are going to give you things like the Forgotten Remembrances and the Lost Remains. And these are actually going to give you the ability to not only increase the amount of mana bases charges that you actually get, but the actual health recovered by your mana bases as well. Also, the different weapons, spells, and different items you get from finding these small little chests are also amazing. You can get some really great items, oath items, buffs for your weapons, again, spells, and plenty of other things from these that will greatly increase your character's power. Whatever you do, don't miss these spots because you can get free great items and even free skill points from them. These blue glowing interactive orbs you'll find in different areas throughout the map, and when you actually click on them, they'll tell you to perform a specific action. For instance, on PlayStation, if you actually hit the big middle button in the middle of your controller, you'll gain access to your pose menu. Now, it will actually tell you to perform a specific type of pose, for instance, Tai Chi, and if you perform that type of pose at the end of the animation, it will actually give you a reward, whether that's skill points, whether that's a cool, unique item, but it's stuff you can really only get from doing these specific things. Those are the biggest mistakes in Wuchang Fallen Feathers. If you enjoyed this, drop a like on the video, subscribe if you're new, and check out either of these videos. You don't want to miss them.